Hey, comrade. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Can you all hear me? If you can hear me, just let me know down in the chat over here, in the YouTube chat. All right, great. I just have to figure out how to add our comrade Noor here. Just give me 1 minute. We're using StreamYard for the first time, so it's please bear with us. It's a bit of an experiment.
Hello, I think I'm added.
Yeah, I think I just was able to add you. Okay, cool.
Hey everyone, it's my first time streaming.
Yeah, it's my first time streaming on StreamYard, that's for sure. Actually, I did it with Caleb Maupin once, but he took care of all of the technological stuff. Hold on a second. Let's just move this here. All right. Okay. Let's see how it looks. All right, looks great. All right, well, actually, I'm a little tilted. 1 second. All right. Let's see how this looks here. All right, looks fine to me. Okay, well, welcome to the Revolution Report's live stream on Donbass and who's fanning the flames of conflict there. If you've been following the news, then you obviously know that things have been heating up in the region in Donbass between Ukraine and the people's militias there, and between Ukraine and Russia and NATO and basically everyone involved in the conflict in that region. So. The Revolution Report is actually collaborating with Jeff Monson to film a documentary film project in Donbass. And we just got back from our second round of filming there. So we wanted to share with you all a bit of our experience in Donbass, what we saw with our very own eyes. It was me and Jeff Monson who went there, but Noor's also been following the conflict and the developments and the escalation that's been happening over the past several months very closely. So what we're going to do is we're going to give Noor the floor at the beginning here, and he's going to explain a bit of background of the escalations that have been going on in the past several months for those that haven't been, following it day to day. And then I'm going to go into my own. Experiences in Donbass, what information I've learned by going there firsthand. I have actually got a lot of statistical information that the authorities there were able to give me in terms of how the Ukrainian military has been violating the Minsk protocols that are supposed to be sustaining peace in that region. So without further ado, let's begin. So Noor, give us a rundown of what's been going on in that region.
Oh, hi everyone. Nice to see you all. This is my first time on the channel, appearing on the camera. And so I'll quickly get into it. So basically, you all must have been hearing about how Russia has been building up its forces on the Ukrainian border and all across the Baltic nations like Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia and it just wants to blitzkrieg into Ukraine. At least that's what the United States and the UK and the West has been telling everyone. But we'll start with a little background of how it all started. So the most recent ceasefire was adopted in July 2020 by a group of 3 nations. That's Russia, Ukraine, and one of the West nations. And there were representatives of the Donetsk People's Republic and the Lugansk People's Republic. So they all agreed upon a ceasefire, and recently in October this year, Ukraine used a drone, a Turkish-made drone. It's called Bayraktar TB2. So in a no drone zone, and that was a violation of the agreement that they of the points that they agreed on. The drone they used was used in a no drone zone, and it attacked. I believe it was a Donetsk People's Republic militia artillery battery or a rocket battery or something like that. And ever since, and following that, immediately the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia gave a statement that this action could potentially have like wider impact in the region in the future, in the near future, to quote their words. And this this action by Ukraine, they didn't take it by themselves. They were green lighted from Washington. They used a Turkish drone. Everything had been going on smoothly. There were occasional violations of ceasefire, as Donald will tell you from his experiences. He went there, and but this drone use has been seen as a major development, and since Washington very likely green lighted it, and Russian intelligence forces, of course, they know what's happening on the ground. They have done this defensive measure of building up forces, not exactly building up, but placing forces on a more alert level, on a raised alert level, hundreds of kilometers away from Ukraine. So that it's not directly on the border at Ukraine. It's hundreds of kilometers away from the border of Ukraine, about 200 to 350 kilometers. So then we've got all these the West. It started with Politico. That's the Politico did a story, and it showed satellite images of Russian military equipment gathering on the border of Ukraine, as they said it. Hundreds of thousands of troops. The Ukrainian side is claiming there are 115,000 troops on their borders, and that's how it all started. And after that, the United States in particular, has been rallying all of Europe to, including NATO, all of Europe, everyone to gather an international response to this so-called Russian aggression. And we all know, if you've been following the news today, there have been several meetings this week. We've got the Secretary of State Department, the Antony Blinken, in Europe this week. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met him today, and they exchanged some pretty. It wasn't. According to me, it wasn't. They wouldn't have achieved a breakthrough. The meeting lasted only for about 30 minutes, and they didn't achieve any big breakthroughs in the deadlock. And so what's been happening with NATO is that all of NATO nations, including non-NATO nations, have been sending their troops to the Russian border. And to be honest, this just proves that Russia has been saying the truth for the past couple of years. That how quickly can NATO and the West can mobilize forces on its borders. That's how close their forces are to its borders, and it just backs it up with evidence. Just look at the ground. Finland, which is not even a NATO nation, Finland is conducting exercises with their own military fighter jets. We've got Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia sending troops to Poland and heightening the alert level on their own borders with Russia. We have got Ukraine being given just today 31 million euros of aid from the European Union, and we've got United States trainers. Well, they have been there for ever since the Crimea voted to join Russia, and from in 2014. But they have been increasing their intensity of their routines, of their drills, and we've also got Ukrainians using Javelin anti-tank missiles in on the DPR militia. So that's the first time U.S. made military equipment openly has been used in warfare. And we've also got so the whole plan is to make Ukraine and Georgia a part of NATO. And we all know Austin, the military head of the United States, visited Georgia and Ukraine both. Now they both have received aid from EU, and Jens Stoltenberg, the General Secretary of the NATO, is going around European nations giving a tough message to Russia, to that it does not have the right to. Well, we all know that it's not true, but he's telling Russia to back off. Well, when they are the ones going towards the Russian border, and so today's developments have also been pretty worrying. Russian's internal security agency, the FSB, got 3 Ukrainians. 2 of them had direct links with the Ukrainian security services, the SBU, and one of them was directly related with the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. And they were 2 of them were father and son, and one of them was related to someone else, the Ministry of Defense. They were planning attacks in 3 regions in Russia, acts of sabotage. They were caught with TNT, improvised explosive devices, and they were planning to attack the Black Sea Fleet infrastructure in Crimea and the communications infrastructure elsewhere. And people ask, why doesn't Russia just, like, as Don must have seen, and he will share with you, that people in Donbass and Lugansk want to join Russia. They're not being forced to join Russia. They don't want to associate themselves with fascism. They they are happy, more than happy, to join Russia without any coercion. There's no coercion going on. He's been on the ground, and he will tell you. And so why doesn't Russia just go on and accept these republics into the Russian Federation? Well, when 2014 happened, when people voted democratically voted to join Russia, the West imposed sanctions. Russia was kicked out of the G8, which is now G7, and they what they did not do was impose high impact economic sanctions. If Russia does this time, if Russia does it this time, that it takes the Donetsk People's Republics and Lugansk People's Republic into the Russian Federation territory, the West will impose high impact economic sanctions, which will literally devastate the Russian economy. And who wants that? I mean, Russia does not have any intention of destroying its own economy. Who would in their right mind? And we've also got another development just in around 2 hours ago, that Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the US is thinking to deploy intermediate range missiles in Europe. I mean, I don't know who's if that doesn't tell you that Russia isn't the one Russia isn't the one, the aggressor here. I don't know what will. But we've also got that in Germany they reactivated a Cold War era nuclear artillery, and it's just they're doing a lot of things behind the scenes. We also saw videos of Ukrainian military shooting at migrants, but those are unreliable. Their veracity has been verified, but Lukashenko says that there are graves at Ukrainian and Belarusian border, but that's a completely different issue. And we've got Ukrainian defense minister, foreign minister meeting with officials in Pentagon, Washington. So one can only imagine what they are thinking to do. And the Russian authorities, they know that Ukraine has got more than half of its army. That's around, I believe it's around 125,000, and they've got half of their army right on the borders of Donbass and Lugansk. So you guys decide who's the aggressor here. I've laid this situation out to you. It's pretty clear who's the aggressor here.
Yeah, thanks for that, Noor. I'm just gonna set up a charger right here so my camera doesn't lose too much of its battery. But yeah, that was a really good rundown of what's been intensifying the situation there and also what's happened recently. I'm going to talk a bit about what's been going on recently at the end of what I'm going to say. But I'm going to start with my most recent experiences in Donbass. So basically, this is, I mean, I've been to Donbass many times. The first time I was there was in 2017. I was still a student at university. And for already many years, I was curious about what was going on there because when the events of 2014, 2015 were taking place, I was watching on the news that, you know, a lot of people were flying Soviet flags, and a lot of people there were, you know, openly portraying the imagery of the Soviet Union in Donbass. And on the other hand, you had the people fighting them, they were openly showing images like swastikas, you know. So for me, it was really interesting to see how these two ideologies, you know, that came head to head in World War II are coming into direct conflict again in Ukraine. And also, I found it very interesting that a lot of Americans who were like communists and even, you know, Europeans as well who were leftists were going to Donbass to volunteer and to fight in these militias that formed to defend themselves from the invading Ukrainian forces. I didn't really know what was going on, but in 2017, I was invited to go see for myself what the place was like by the Federation of Trade Unions, the Trade Union Federation in Lugansk. It's one of the most powerful organizations in the Lugansk People's Republic, and you know that's a big indication of how much power workers have in this independent People's Republic. The Federation, the Trade Union Federation, organized international anti-fascist conferences every year for specifically for foreigners to come and see what was going on in Ukraine and the People's Republics. And we all participated in the May Day parade on May 1st every year. We went to a bunch of conferences where people who lived in Lugansk spoke about their experiences there and everything. So I've been there many times, but the last time I was there, like I said, was the second round of filming for this documentary film, and we got a lot of stuff done. I mean, we got the full support of the state of the Lugansk People's Republics and the Donetsk People's Republic. We were given vehicles. We whatever we asked to see and whoever we asked to talk to, they got it done. And so we spoke with the president of the or the head of the LNR, the head of the DNR. We spoke to people who have been affected by this war negatively, which is the main thing we wanted to see. I mean, we want to show in this documentary how people are still being affected by this conflict, specifically people who are just trying to live their lives, like people who are not actively fighting in this war, because a lot of people in the West have forgotten about it. They've, you know, it's fallen out of the media. It's not getting that much attention, and people are still, you know, getting injured and dying, you know, pretty much every week, if not every month, definitely. So, I mean, when we were there, we heard bombings every single day. Actually, I can give you the actual statistics of what were going on some of the days that we were there, because I did an interview with a woman who was actually on the negotiating team for the Minsk protocols from the Lugansk People's Republic. She actually showed me a Telegram channel that listed all of the violations of the Minsk agreements that Ukraine commits every single day, at what time, and very specifically, there's very specific information connected to it. I mean, we went there between November 17th and November 21st. And the first day we got there, I'll read you just some of the violations of the Minsk agreement committed by the Ukrainians. At 6 o'clock in the morning, in a village called Chervony Liman. I wrote everything in Latin letters. I don't know why, so it's kind of harder to read than if it was in Russian. But there were 3 artillery shellings on that in that area where civilians live at 6 o'clock in the morning. At 8:40 in the morning, in the area of Kalinova Barshevatoye, 18 artillery shells fell on that area. Again, civilians live there. And there's a bunch of others, on that day, another 4 instances of breaches of the Minsk protocols took place, in which like scores of artillery shells were dropped, and in some instances mortars. Like when I say artillery, I mean we're talking about like heavy artillery here, like something that would make you go deaf if you were exposed to that every day and it was blowing up, across the street. The mortars obviously are a bit smaller, but they still, do serious damage. Luckily on that day, there were no casualties, but infrastructure was destroyed. On the other hand, on November 19th, when we were there, there was only one instance of the breaching of Ukraine breaching the Minsk protocols in Dolgaya, which is a village. There were 4 mortar shellings, and a 47-year-old woman was injured. So these are just a couple examples. These are examples that took place on our trip when we were there. But I mean, people die from this all the time. And actually, there's a link I'm going to put in the chat, which is a link to a website that we have on our website, TheRevolutionReport.com. It's an article that was written by one of the members of the top council in the Lugansk People's Republic. His name is Andrei. I know him personally. He wrote this article using information that the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe has collected in the Lugansk People's Republic. This is basically a European, it's supposed to be like a neutral organization that does not participate in the conflict and basically just gathers information, records when a strike happened here or there or a battle or whatever. But I got to be honest, like the majority of the people in Donbass don't like them very much because they seem to always know when there's going to be a Ukrainian artillery bombardment in an area, because they always quickly leave before that takes place and they don't tell anyone. And it's likely that they know that they're told by the Ukrainians when an artillery strike is going to happen, and they get out of the way, and people there are going to suffer anyway. But I guess they don't tell anyone because they don't want to sacrifice their neutrality. But I mean, to me, it's not really neutral if they're letting people on that side die. But anyway, there's statistics in that article that I just shared in the chat that shows that, of course, in any conflict, civilians die on both sides. I mean, that's the terrible reality of war. But what these statistics of civilian deaths show is that civilians are being indiscriminately, I mean, like disproportionately killed on the territory of Donbass than they are on the territory of Ukraine. I mean, and the reason for that is something that I saw, and heard for myself when I was there, that the Ukrainian military seems to be carrying out a campaign of indiscriminate shelling. They're indiscriminately shelling civilian populated areas, which to me is a war of attrition. And it seems to me like the Ukrainian military wants to win this war by forcing the people that used to be their own countrymen to live in a state of fear until they surrender. I mean, we went to some of the museums in Lugansk and Donetsk All of the historical museums connected to the Second World War all have an exhibition on the current conflict. And the reason for that is because the people in Lugansk and Donetsk see this current conflict as a continuation of their predecessors' historic battle against fascism in World War II. I mean, Ukraine was one of those places where there was no in between in World War II. There were people who, when the Nazis invaded, there were people who collaborated with them, and there were people who did not. And the people who did not, they became partisans, or they fled to the USSR to join the Red Army. There were very, very few people that just tried to stay neutral throughout the whole thing. It was almost impossible to do that. One woman we interviewed was actually a partisan in World War II. While we were there, we interviewed a woman who was like 95 years old. She was a child during the occupation, and her story really, her story really shows that there was no possibility almost of being neutral. She didn't become a partisan because the Nazis invaded and she was like, these people are evil, I'm going to fight Nazism. That's not actually what happened. She said that, she didn't really know what was going on. And at the beginning of the occupation, she saw these people that looked kind of suspicious, and she saw them run into the forest and she followed after them. They ended up being partisans. And when they found out that she was following them, they were already deep in the forest, and they grabbed her and they were like, what the hell are you doing? Are you working for the Nazis? Blah, 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 blah. And she was like, no, I swear, I was just following you guys because I was, out of pure curiosity. And she talked with them a little while. They gave her some food because obviously food was hard to come by at those times. And she was like, they spent some time together, and she decided that, maybe then, it's right. It's not right that foreign occupiers are there, and maybe I could help some people them out like this, but I'm still not too sure, but she became sure when she went back to the village and realized that the Nazis had interrogated her entire family as to her whereabouts. And what happened was that they asked every single member of her family where she was, and obviously they didn't know, but they weren't going to tell anyway. And they killed every single member of her family. She became an orphan, and just because she wasn't accounted for at the right time. And so she at that moment was like, I have nowhere else to go but to become a partisan. And of course I'm going to take revenge on these people who killed my entire family. So that interview we did was incredibly impactful. And so, like I said, at these museums, they all reflect that, the Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics, these people see themselves as the inheritors of this anti-fascist legacy. And a lot of people in the West see themselves, in Western Ukraine, see themselves as the inheritors of the Nazi collaborator legacy. Even people who don't Heil Hitler and wear swastikas and stuff, a lot of them still see Stepan Bandera as a hero. And for those of you who don't know who Stepan Bandera is, he was a Nazi collaborator who actually was thrown in a concentration camp by the Nazis. And then the Nazis were like, well, you can command your anti-communist insurgency from the concentration camp. And he was like, okay. He's a terrible historical figure, and he's glorified in West Ukraine. And just to give you a sense of some of this contemporary Western Ukrainian propaganda that was used in the war in 2014. You could see it in the museums. They used to drop leaflets on the populations of Lugansk and Donetsk, of course, alongside the artillery that they were dropping in civilian populated areas. And this propaganda was saying stuff like, oh, do you want your water back on? Do you want your electricity back on? Well, you have to come back to Ukraine. Like, they were using these human necessities as a bargaining chip to try and get the Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics back, because which to me seems a bit genocidal. because the Lugansk and Donetsk electrical grids and water piping systems, they were connected to Ukraine. And when the outbreak of hostilities happened, Ukraine turned off their water and electricity. And for years, they lived, with dirty water and with very, very scarce electricity. And eventually, they were connected to the Russian grid, and now they pay, they pay for their electricity and water to Russia. They're connected to the Russian grid of water and electricity. And this brings me to another point. Ukraine considers Donbass a temporarily occupied zone. Like they call the People's Republics something like the temporarily occupied by Russia Ukrainian regions of Lugansk and Donetsk. I've been to Donbass numerous times. There is no Russian military there. And the reason the West is able to continue this lie that this is some sort of Russian occupation is the information blockades they keep around Donbass. Donbass is under a severe information blockade. It's so difficult to get anything out of there to the Western public. Why? Well, because if you do, then you'll be put on a blacklist in Ukraine that is called Mirotvorets, that actually I saw in the chat, Ronnie Miller actually mentioned the Ukrainians still have me on their Peacemaker database for about 4 years now. Peacemaker is it actually translates to peace. It translates to peacekeeper. Mirotvorets is what this list is, and so if you go to Donbass, if you could just go to Donbass, and even if you don't do anything, but you're just there, and the Ukrainian authorities find out about it, they put you on this list, and you can't go to Ukraine. And if you're like on the naughty list of the Ukrainian government, then that's going to be known to the rest of the European countries and the United States as well. And they're going to do everything they can to stop that information from coming out. And that's why we're doing this documentary film, and I would love to go to the Ukrainian side and go to the villages on the border over there and interview people, because I know for a fact they're not saying that the Donbass, the People's Republics of Donbass, are indiscriminately firing bombs at civilian populations. That would be ridiculous to assert. And the reason, and the Ukrainian authorities know that, which is why they put anyone who goes to Donbass who hears what the people there have to say on this list, so that they can't, that they won't be taken seriously in the West. And I also asked some of the people I spoke to a number of people who are like normal residents that live on the border of the front line. And I asked them what their life is like. And when this documentary film comes out, you're all going to be able to see what kind of conversations we had. And I asked them, like, well, so the Ukrainians are shooting artillery into your civilian populations. Are the people's militias doing the same thing? And they were like, no. Why is that? Because the people on the Ukrainian side of the front line by Lugansk and Donetsk they're considered the same people as the people living on the People's Republic sides. They're actually living under occupation by the Ukrainian military. It's important not to forget that Lugansk and Donetsk were not the only regions that rebelled after 2014, after the Euromaidan coup. Odessa and Kharkov are two other regions that also rebelled. And, we say rebel, but what they did was hold a referendum, which is constitutional according to the Ukrainian constitution, saying that they wanted to be independent. It's completely allowed by Ukrainian law. But the Ukrainian military basically just came in and said, no, you're not gonna leave. And they used military force to keep these regions within the country, and they still control parts of Lugansk and Donetsk. So, when you ask the citizens of the People's Republics, are they firing back on the civilian populations over there? They say, of course not. Those are our people, and a lot of them say we don't know why. We don't know why the Ukrainians are shooting, on people that were their countrymen several years ago. And others say they do know, because they say that the Ukrainian military on the other side of the front line just don't even consider them civilians. They just say, oh, they're just a bunch of separatists, or they're just Russian occupiers. because they have this idea in their head that Donbass is occupied by Russia, which is a complete falsehood. I mean, like I said, I've been there a million times, and I've spoken to uh, many night wolves. You know, like the night wolves are a biker club that's they're also armed in Donbass, and they helped the People's Militia fight in 2014. I've spoken to people who serve in the People's Militia, and you know they're all either foreign volunteers from some other, you know, there are foreign volunteers there, of course, but they come as individuals, or they're like locals who are fighting in what's called the People's Militia there. And their weapons, where do they come from? Well, after they declared independence, they basically took control of the armories that were already there in the Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics, and they've taken tons of war trophies. I've heard so many stories, because we have to remember that the Ukrainian military is a primarily conscript-based military. So when this war started, you know, Ukrainian underwent conscription. The government told a bunch of people that, you know, didn't even want anything to do with the war. They told them, pick up the gun and go fight those people who were your brothers yesterday, you know, and a lot of them didn't see any reason why they would want to do that. On the other hand, the people of Donbass, they don't have conscription. Their people's militias are entirely they're entirely voluntary. And, you know, what is their perspective in this war? They're defending their homes from people they consider foreign invaders. So the morale, the concept of morale is on the side of Donbass. And there was, you know, throughout 2014 and 2015, there were huge numbers of desertions. And, you know, there's tons of stories where Ukrainian conscripts would drive a tank right up to the people's militia, and they'd come under fire and just like get out of the tank and run away. That's I've heard that story tons of times, and that's actually how they took a lot of the uh, military equipment from the Ukrainian military and were able to turn it around on them. There's actually a museum of war materials at the Night Wolves compound in Lugansk People's Republic, which we'll also be showing in the documentary film. We got a tour from that. We got a tour of that from the Night Wolves, and they told us all about it as well. So that's an interesting thing to note. More on what I actually saw when I was there. Um, Basically, when I was in Donetsk, that's when we heard the most shelling. We even went to people who live right up against the front line. We spoke to this man who lives very close to the airport. That's like really close. That's really literally on the front line of between Donetsk and the Ukrainian forces. He lives very close to that airport. And he says the Ukrainians shell all the time, and they specifically shell when everyone's home, when they know everyone is home, sleeping. Around 4 in the morning, they shell them, and around midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, they shell them. And this guy, I did an interview specifically with one guy who, an artillery shell fell right on the roof of his house, and he was telling us about how he got up one morning, or it was around like 5 or 6 in the morning. He got up and just like sat on his couch in his living room, did some morning reading, and he got up from the couch, and literally 5 seconds after he got up from that couch, an artillery shell fell on the roof of his house, and rubble completely destroyed the couch. If he would have gotten up 5 seconds later, he would have been dead. So, you know, a lot of people have stories like that, and you ask them why they don't leave. You know, we did plenty of that. We asked everyone why they don't leave, and you know, basically, a lot of people have left, but these people consider themselves patriots, and you know, they basically tell us this is my home, this is where I grew up, this is where my family is, and I'm not going to be scared away by the Ukrainians. You know, this is where I'm going to make a stand. This is what a lot of people say. Others say, you know, others, you ask them, why don't you leave? And they say, well, the alternative is to become a refugee somewhere. And that life is not very luxurious either. So, you know, again, better to be in the place where I was born, that I grew up, and better to defend it than to give it up to some invaders that are trying to take it over. And they really consider them invaders. I mean, the majority of people we spoke to consider themselves Russian, actually. And don't get me wrong, there are different people who believe different things in Donbass. There are people who consider themselves Ukrainian in Donbass, but I would say they're in the stark minority. And there are people who consider themselves who don't consider themselves Ukrainian and maybe consider themselves Russian, but they want the people's republics to remain independent. But in my experience, being there, the vast majority of people, especially people who are suffering daily artillery bombardment on their homes, kids going to school suffering from artillery bombardment, they're just trying to live their normal lives, and to them, living their normal lives through artillery bombardment is their own form of resistance. These people, more than ever, more than most, seem to say that they want to be part of Russia, actually. And this sentiment is what I've heard overwhelmingly from the people living there, that they actually want the people's republics to be integrated into the Russian Federation, which I was really surprised about when I, started asking people about this and heard this from almost everyone I spoke to, because the narrative in the West is that this place was invaded by Russia. And you go there and you realize that there are no Russian military forces there. But then you talk to the people and, they wish that the Russian military was there. Because if the Russian military was there, that would mean that, Ukraine would have a lot more thinking to do if they were going to start indiscriminately bombing their villages, Like Ukraine indiscriminately bombs these places because they consider them, tiny separatist groupings that can be easily won over. But if it was Russia, then they would not be able to do that. They can't start a war with Russia. They would lose, and especially if they don't have the backing of NATO and the European Union and the United States, which they definitely will not get if they were to be waging this war of attrition against Russian land. So this is the interesting thing. A lot of people there want to be part of Russia, and like Noor was talking about before, you might ask why Russia hasn't annexed that place, and well, because they would it's not economically viable for Russia, number one. And this is just what I think. It's not economically viable. It would take a lot of investment to reconstruct this war-torn region for Russia, and at the same time, there's no doubt going to be serious sanctions against Russia if Russia were to annex the People's Republics. It would be Europe and the United States would economically attack Russia very severely. And I'm sure you, based on, if you know history, you believe me, but if you don't, there's a recent threat that Victoria Nuland just issued today. Victoria Nuland, the U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, she said that if Russia decides to escalate the situation, which Russia is not doing, the escalation is, which I saw with my very own eyes on the side of Ukraine, who is, bombing these civilian settlements. Russia's not bombing anything over there. All they've done is move their military close, like 200 kilometers away from their border with Donbass, but they've moved their military significantly close to their border there because the Ukrainian military has moved half of its military up to the border with Donbass. And they obviously need to protect their security, but there's nothing wrong with moving your military on your own territory. But Victoria Nuland basically said if Russia escalates the situation, then there's going to be high impact economic measures, the likes of which we have not used before from all of NATO. So they're already putting their cards on the table that if Russia does anything that the West doesn't like in this region, then there's going to be serious economic sanctions. So, why would Russia do that, even if the people there really want to become part of Russia? it's a tough decision for Moscow in that situation. But I mean, if push comes to shove, Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov said that Russia will defend Russians, and that includes the people in the people's republics if Ukraine decides that they're going to invade them. So, so when we were filming in Donbass, we got a lot of really cool interviews with people, specifically people who were negatively affected by this conflict. We got interviews with people who lived in the USSR. Like I said, this World War II veteran, but I also got another interview with another woman who was a member of a Veterans Association, who was a bit younger, but she also talked about her experience in the USSR, which I think we're going to make another video out of perhaps, because our Does Socialism Work video really went well on the channel. And the biggest criticism of it was that, oh, these people were the elites. They were living in Moscow during the USSR, so of course they like it. So we got the perspectives of people who lived in Ukraine during the USSR, okay? Which is like, tons of people in the West say, oh, that's where there was like terrible famine, Stalin committed a genocide, blah, 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 blah. Lo and behold, there's a lot of people there who look on their Soviet past very fondly, and you're going to be able to see their perspectives either, probably also in the documentary film, but also definitely in separate videos on our channel. So, but the reason I really wanted to do this video also was not only to show, this live stream was not only to show what we're doing with our documentary film, but also because, like Noor was saying, the situation is getting very tense, especially just today. I mean, I was just today reading about the fact that these 3 Ukrainian security services agents were caught by the FSB in Russia planning terrorist attacks in Russia. And they were, they actually did video confessions. They confessed to being trained by, the Ukrainian government and instructed by the Ukrainian government to gather sensitive information and to commit terrorist attacks. I mean, to me, this is just another example of how Ukraine is really trying to instigate Russia into, into taking a hostile action against them so that they can say that they're the victim and that they need to go to war with Russia, and they can ask NATO and the US for help because they'll look like the victim. But luckily FSB foiled it, ahead of time, and that these terror attacks were not allowed to go through. And I just want to share with you guys another startling thing that happened today. The words of Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. He said, NATO refuses to consider our proposals on de-escalation of tensions and prevention of dangerous incidents. On the contrary, the alliance's military infrastructure is moving closer to Russia's borders. The nightmarish scenario of military confrontation is returning. And this is something he said today. And I mean, I have to tell you, as a journalist, a journalist with American and Russian citizenship, I've been working here for 4 years, following the news very closely. The situation here is, concerning the Donbass conflict, is the worst, I would say the worst that it's been since 2015 in terms of how tension is rising. And it's only connected to that as well. I mean, also over the past several weeks, maybe you heard about it, maybe you have not, but the United States has been moving nuclear weapons closer to Russia. Or actually, they've been, sorry, not nuclear weapons. They've been positioning strategic bombers that are nuclear capable on the border with Russia. And actually, China and Russia have had a couple of bilateral meetings discussing the fact that they're actually facing the United States as a common security threat. And they're discussing ways on how to strengthen mutual cooperation in the sphere of security, because, you got to look at China as well. The American Navy is in the South China Sea constantly, which they have no right to be in. And they're also, you also have Joe Biden saying that Taiwan is a country and that the U.S. is going to defend it in the case of any sort of Chinese aggression. So, China and Russia are both facing intensified aggression at the on the part of the United States, and Donbass is really just one sphere of that. So yeah, some really startling stuff. I hope that was informative for you guys. And actually, if you want to put any questions in the chat, we could spend a little bit of time answering them right now. I'm just going to go through the chat right now and look at what you guys have been talking about. Yeah, oh yeah. I saw Russell Bentley's video early morning in Ukraine. Yeah, I saw that I was looking for that message. I remember you said something about Russell Bentley in the chat. Yeah, Russell Bentley, if you don't know him, he goes by the nickname Texas. He volunteered for the Donetsk, one of the Donetsk People's Militias, one of the Donetsk People's Militias back in 2014, and he fought the Ukrainians. Actually, we met with him for the documentary film, and he showed us around the Donetsk front as well. He showed us a lot of cool, he showed us where his former position was, and he showed us around the outskirts of the airport and the monastery that are on the front line that were bombed as well. And I haven't seen that video that you're mentioning in the chat there, but I'm sure that there definitely was artillery shelling there going on, and that Russell Bentley was covering that. Another thing you could check out on Russell's YouTube channel, actually, he's got some videos about a mass grave that was uncovered in Lugansk People's Republic. And it was just recently uncovered, potential war crime that Ukraine committed in 2015. They say it's from just a bunch of bodies dumped in a shallow ditch, and now the authorities in Lugansk People's Republic are trying to identify them and give them proper burials. So that's something that's quite concerning. So let's look at some of the questions we got. Any word on when the documentary will be available? No, I didn't already mention it. To be honest, we're not really sure, but I can say for sure that it'll be the first half of next year. We're going to try to get it done as quickly as possible because it seems like this conflict is escalating quickly. Let's see. Anthea Knapper says, "What does the U.S. and NATO want out of war with Russia?" I mean, I would say that it's undoubtedly, the end goal of the United States picking fights with Russia is destabilizing Russia, basically. I mean, what was the aim of destabilizing the USSR to begin with? It was to take control of the markets, allow U.S. corporations, European corporations, to make mega profits off of the potential of capturing the markets in Russia. Now the current government in Russia is authoritarian, according to the Western media and Western governments, because it decides that it's decided it's going to make the rules for the Russian economy, not foreign corporations. And so I think I don't think the West actually wants war with Russia because it would be really ugly, but they're going to push the envelope as far as they can to try and threaten Russia and to try to bully it, and that all has to do with capturing its markets, I think. Noor, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that when the Soviet Union was illegally dissolved in 1991, it was at that moment that a Cold War against Russia began. At that very moment, and it's been going on ever since. Russia has always considered the West to be its partner. I mean, if any of you have ever seen, like in most of the videos, Vladimir Putin says that our partners did this, our partners promised this. But I don't think that the West has ever considered Russia to be an equal partner. It's just
No.
that they just want and of course, Russia has immense resources, and who won't want that, even if you are capitalist. It's a capitalist dream.
Yeah, definitely. I have to agree with you there, especially with what you said about the Russian authorities. Russian in politics on TV, Sergei Lavrov, Vladimir Putin, they're always calling the Western politicians their American partners, European partners, blah blah blah. You don't hear you don't hear Washington ever calling
Yeah,
Sergei Lavrov a Russian partner. It's the Russian state is trying to get in an equal footing with the West, and the West is like, no, we're still trying to completely control your markets, and that I personally think that's one criticism I have of the current administration in Russia is they're uh, they're hoping for things that are not going to happen. You know, they're not going to be. I really don't think that. Peace peaceful. I guess without war, yeah, that's possible. But I really don't think diplomacy that's good-hearted and in good faith is possible between Russia and the West because the West won't allow it. Joe the Red asks a very interesting question. Are the Night Wolves communists, and is there a weird melding of conservatism and communism in Donbass, or is the liberal individualism of American conservatism completely foreign in Donbass? This is a good question. So the Night Wolves, we actually asked them because they're ideologically very interesting. I don't think they like labels like that. They don't like to call them they don't like calling themselves like communist or whatever, but oh, sorry, my cat just jumped on top of me. They don't like calling them communist or whatever, but if you ask them about what the USSR was like in building socialism, they're like, yeah, that was the right thing to do. We should do this. All right, well, whatever. I guess I'll just leave them here. But yeah, if you ask the Night Wolves about, especially the ones that are older and lived during the time of the USSR, they'll say, the Soviet Union was a time when we were strong and we were able to defend our self-interests and we were building a society that was beneficial for everyone in society. But I remember I asked one guy how he considers himself ideologically. He was like, "Well, I'm a communist monarchist, I think." It's like I found that very interesting. There is some sort of blend between social conservatism and economic communism and political communism. That's definitely something that is present in Donbass. Not only in the Night Wolves, but also in the trade union as well. They're really old school kind of Soviet communists. They act but at the same time, they're not. Almost none of them are actually a member of a communist party. That's what's interesting. All right. So, what else we got here? I hope the U.S. doesn't think nuclear winter is a solution to global warming. Yeah, I agree. I hope not as well. I know a friend who lives in DNR. He doesn't want DNR to be part of Russia, but he also wants Ukraine to respect ethnic Russians living in Ukraine who've been natives in that region. Yeah, that's a good point to make. Like I said, I can only speak from my own experience. It seems to me like the vast majority of people want to be integrated into Russia, but definitely not all. I also spoke to people who did not want that and described basically what Bake Blackbean just messaged in the chat. So, so that is a good point. By the way, I just wanted to give a very big thank you to Sisyphus Vasilius for giving I think that's called a super chat to us, $10. Thanks a lot. We appreciate it. It's going to go to our further our operations in Donbass. Okay, you got to go down now. Yeah. So let's see if we can get to some of these other questions in the chat. Maybe Nora, we could find one that isn't connected specifically to experience in Donbass that you can answer. He really wants to be part of this. This is my cat Castro, by the way, named after the great Fidel Castro. So,
Yeah, I'd like to add something to what
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been said. I mean, that's what Russia as well wants, like respect to ethnic Russians living there in the regions that are not a part of the Russian Federation. I mean, Ukraine recently passed a law, I believe, that basically says that that basically classifies Russians as not like first class citizens and second class humans, which was basically called by officials in Russia as similar to the Nuremberg laws and race laws that were passed by Hitler. So that's what Russia wants, to be honest. And labeling it as aggression is, I don't know, what is it? What can we say?
Yeah, I gotta agree with 100% because like I mentioned before, Sergei Lavrov, his response to Ukrainian aggression in this region is always, we're going to defend Russians, and it doesn't matter where they are, and these people in people's republics, they consider themselves Russians, and if they're attacked, then Russia's going to step in. So that's a good point. And actually, I think if you're a communist, if you're a Marxist, and you understand the world through different like self-interests of different ideologies, um, I would say it's a good bet. You can pretty much predict the behavior of the Russian government when you consider it a kind of like a sort of non-aggressive nationalism. They're trying to assert themselves and make sure they don't become a colony, and that's basically their self-interest, and it's reflected in their international politics. Does anyone know what happened to the anti-government movement in Ukraine controlled Kharkov? Um, ah, no, I don't actually know what happened there, but I'm sure probably not good things, because Kharkov is like I mean Kharkov was one of the places that had the most support for breaking away from Ukraine, and they were forced to stay anyway by the Ukrainian military. So I'm actually not sure, but I know a lot of people there are living in fear. That's for sure. Does YouTube report money transfers to the CIA? I hope not. Hey there, Bake Black Bean. I'm the South Korean guy who sent a Twitter DM to you. I remember you. That's cool. I'm glad you're on the I'm glad you're on the live stream. Thanks for joining us. Well, Nor, if you do you have anything else you wanted to add on the subject?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I just like to sum it up. I mean,
Yeah,
what
if you want
this,
to,
this
you could give the closing statements if you want. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, this information that I gave in the beginning is just it's out in the public. It's I don't have any special links to the KGB or anywhere like to the intelligence agencies. It's out in the public, and it's out. You just have to search for it. You just have to type in the right words, and I mean, just think for yourself and don't arrive to conclusions just after reading one headline that Politico posted that Russia is building up troops, or dig deeper, think for yourself, and yeah, watch us. We think for ourselves and we tell you to think for yourself as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're not we're not paid by anyone to do this. We do this entirely for free. We rely on the gratuity of our great patrons to get any sort of monetary compensation for what we do. We don't even use it for compensation either. We use it for getting more equipment for the channel, and we're going to be using it for advertisement on YouTube on Instagram as well. And oh, you got a nice compliment there, Nor, and in the chat. And another thing is that, comrades, if you want to see Donbass for yourself, and this is assuming there's not a war that changes the situation dramatically in the next several months, which I really hope is not the case. But if you want to see Donbass yourself, I mean, I became one of the organizers for these international anti-fascist conference. in which these conferences in which the people's republics make it so that foreigners can come and see for themselves what's going on the ground. I became one of the organizers for it. And the only reason they haven't been going on is because of the pandemic. But once the pandemic is over, we really want to restart these international anti-fascist conferences, and we want to get as many people to these as possible. So if you guys want to come, all you would have to do is message me on the YouTube channel somewhere. Just drop a comment wherever you want, and we'd make sure that you'd have the opportunity to get there. But I will announce it on my YouTube on the YouTube channel community tab next time that's even going to be possible, because right now there's extremely strict COVID restrictions there. I mean, this is another thing for why this documentary film is going to be so special, because basically there are no foreign journalists allowed there right now, with very, very few exceptions. I was only able to get an exception because I'm a journalist. I was able to get a special exception to cross the border. Even people with Russian citizenship cannot cross the border unless they have a special permit, which I was able to get. And then I was able to go on get official accreditation in Donbass to do this project. So you guys are going to see a documentary that is made of super exclusive footage, something that really nobody else is doing right now. So we hope to get it to you guys as quickly as possible. It's going to be available in English and Russian. So whichever language you speak, if you speak both, that's great. You'll be able to watch it in either language. And so that's what we're going to be working on over the next several months. And of course, we'll be bringing you some other content as well. Actually, next week, we were thinking we're going to do a podcast, or not a podcast, but a live stream about the inflation that's going on right now across the world, because inflation is basically, if you understand political economy, it's theft. It's the ruling class stealing from the working class, so that they don't suffer from economic depressions and that we do. But, Nora and I have been reading a lot about political economy, what the Soviets had to say about it. They made great developments in political economy that, is really hard for people in the West to get their hands on, because a lot of it is not translated into English. But we're going to share some of that information with you on the live stream. Hopefully we're going to be able to do next week. And we're going to talk about this kind of stuff. So thanks a lot for tuning in, everyone. And keep on looking out for the content that we're going to be putting out. And workers of the world, unite.
I think people are asking if I have a YouTube channel. No, I don't have a YouTube channel. I work with Donald. I'm the graphic designer and the researcher. So I work behind the scenes, and you've seen me for the first time.
Yeah, comrades, this is we're part of the Revolution Report Politburo. So this our channel isn't operated by one person. It's me and Nor and someone else who helps us once in a while. And so that's the case. But anyway, we'll see you next time. And like I said, workers of the world unite.
Yep. Bye-bye.